church to take these bodies and move them, place them somewhere else so that it wasn't an issue anymore. But there was so much pushback from the church. We don't disturb a burial site. We don't desanctify it. We leave them there. We don't disturb them.
Right.
Because of how pissed off the church was, the only thing that Louis XV could do to help was issue an edict banning all further funerals from taking place within the capital. This edict was issued by Louis XV in 1763. His successor, Louis XVI,
right,
he maintained this ban on the burials within the city capital, and nothing really was done until about 1780, when they no longer had much of a choice. That year, there was a prolonged period of spring rain that caused a wall around Les Innocents to collapse, and it spilled a whole fuck ton of rotting corpses into the neighboring residence. It wasn't a good time.
No.
It was a bad time.
Yeah, because when bodies come spilling into your area, period, doesn't matter if it's your shop or your house, you're kind of done.
After that, it became indisputably apparent that the city needed to really find a better place to put their dead. So they began to empty the cemeteries in 1786, starting with Les Innocents, obviously because that really required the most attention. And it took a total of 12 years for them to move all the bones from that cemetery.
Do you know why it took so long
for
them to get the bodies moved?
You mean from the time that the wall had collapsed until the time they actually started working on it?
Yeah.
I don't, but I feel like you're going to tell me.
I'm going to tell you.
Tell me.
So they, in order to not disrupt the people of Paris during the day or times of which people were awake at night, they would gather bones from different areas and then take them down to the catacombs. They were flanked by priests and people from the church that were doing blessings up and down the street to avoid any sort of bad luck that was from removing the bodies.
You have to imagine that. A cart full of body parts, a cart full of them, and you're bringing them into the catacombs, which are like 6 stories underground, okay? And the passageways are very narrow, so not an easy feat getting these carts down into the catacombs.
And at that time, there's no way that was done really easily.
Yeah. By the time the burials had ended, the bones of 6 million Parisians were laid to rest in the catacombs.
That's pretty awesome. I didn't know it was that many. I mean, I knew it was a crazy amount.
It is a lot. And that is, you know how earlier I mentioned how sometimes you find conflicting articles? Mm-hmm. Most articles say 6 million, some of them say 7 million, but in an effort to be more accurate and not overshoot this, I wanted to go with 6 million because that's the number that I find the most consistently. It's total right now.
Oh.
It's total right now. It continued to grow even after they moved the bones. Some of the oldest bodies in the catacombs, they date back as far as 1,200 years.
Killer.
And then beginning during the French Revolution, the dead were being buried directly in the catacombs.
They're no longer burying bodies in the catacombs currently?
Oh, yeah, no, they stopped that. The city stopped moving bones into the catacombs in 1860.
Nice.
Here's something interesting about the catacombs. They stretch for a super crazy length, right? They span for 200 miles.
Wow.
One of the things that I did not realize is that the shallowest parts of the catacombs are roughly about 5 stories below ground. There were even points in history where they had to commission people to refigure the way that they were working in the tunnels in the catacombs because there were sinkholes that were swallowing buildings whole. Today, just a little bit more than a mile of the 200 miles in the catacombs are open for visitors to go and explore. It is illegal to visit most of the areas in the catacombs. And then as visitors pass into it, they walk under a doorway that reads, "Stop, this is the Empire of Death." And that, by the way, that is what I want above my front door one day when I have a house. Once you get inside of the catacombs, the bones are actually organized pretty well. They're grouped by cemetery. Some of the bones are very neatly stacked. Some of them appear in arranged patterns. Others are very strategically placed to create images, such as crosses. If we go there, you're going to have to wear 16 layers of clothing. The tunnels have a constant chilly temperature of 57 degrees.
Oh, no, pass.
I think that, part of the reason that there's so much activity happening in the catacombs is, desecrated graves and then the beliefs of the people at the time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of kickback from the church, and that was a widely held belief. It still is for a lot of people that a desecrated grave is not a great thing.
Especially since they're now using the bones that they couldn't attribute to one person only to make decorations.
Truth. I kind of feel like the reason that they had put them in those intricate patterns and had created images with them were so that it wasn't just like a dirty tunnel. I think that they were trying to make it more of like a beautiful sacred space for them. There's a lot of parties that get thrown down there. The parts that tourists see where things are stacked in like a real fun kind of pretty way, those typically aren't the parts that the parties and raves are being held in.
People are going in. They're found by urban explorers.
People are going in through the many different secret entrances that are all throughout the city. To this day, they still don't know how many entrances there are hidden throughout the city into the catacombs.
And the police, I guess, are the ones that are trying to monitor what they do actually know and then find the ones that they haven't heard of.
The entrances that the police have and that they know about and they keep locked up for like their purposes to go down there and investigate. People know where the police entrances are, even though they try to keep them secret.
Right.
They're called cataphiles. That's the word that's used. Yeah, which is real cool. They're these urban explorers that's their passion. They go down there, they map these catacombs out, they try to get real far in there. And really, I think in a lot of ways they're kind of doing a service, even though what they're doing is very dangerous and it's also super illegal. And a lot of the entrances that have been found have been welded over and sealed up so that people can't go through them.
Right.
But apparently they've left flyers and signs and stuff and the police entrances.
Yeah.
For the police to find later on, and they'll open it up and just be like, thanks for the doorway. Some explorers who enter the catacombs have gotten lost. A few have never emerged. A lot of visitors, once they visit the catacombs, they report hearing voices specifically coming from the walls talking to them. Found footage was probably found like in the late 90s, very early 2000s. I watched this footage over and over again. It's very unsettling. So it starts out, it's the first person perspective. It's a guy and he's in the catacombs and he's actually very deep in the catacombs. He's not at the surface level, he's not by the visitor parts. He is miles within the catacombs, right? So he's walking around, and as the tape goes on, he starts to really pick up the pace, and his breathing audibly gets louder and faster, super heavy, until he looks behind him a couple of times like something's following him. He starts running. He drops the camera at one point. And also, too, the camera is his light. The camera is his light source. He drops the camera in a puddle, and he runs very quickly into the dark parts of the catacombs, and he never comes back. And there's a couple hours of footage after the fact of the camera in this puddle just running. And the camera was discovered years later.
And this may or may not be an urban legend, but someone had said that they had seen something run past the camera.
That video, when it was found, there was a filmmaker who also was a cataphile, had a bunch of friends that were cataphiles, and they were like, we want to go into the catacombs, and the whole purpose of this documentary was to go down in there and see if they could find the remains of this explorer. This guy, he's got a friend that's a very talented videographer, he's got a sound guy, and he has one of the most renowned cataphiles in all of Paris. So he's gone deeper into the catacombs than anybody else, and he has it mapped out, right? These aren't open, tall walkways. They're not like normal hallways. No. There are parts where they're on their chest, crawling under the smallest, like, 1.5 foot wide crevices. So they get to a certain point where they're starting to notice there are drawings on the walls, there are pictures that they notice from that found footage of the explorer that went missing. And they get to a certain point, the man that's leading them, the cataphile, he turns around and he said, Anybody who's not me or any of my friends, if they got this far, they're not making it out.
No.
They are 6 hours worth of a journey into the catacombs. Honestly, you're 6 hours worth of a journey into the catacombs. If your light dies, there's no way that you're going to find your way out. They never found his remains. They got to a point where they were like, we have to turn around. And by the time they had made it back out of the catacombs, they had been underground with the dead for 12 hours. To be in that far and to not be prepared, it is a death sentence. Actually, in the documentary, there's like one of the secret exits that the police use that they try coming out of, and it's locked. And they're like, we didn't plan for this with our batteries. We have to hope now that we can get back to another point of exit that we know of without our footage running out and our batteries dying. Actually, after all of that running around down there, said that he never really wanted to go back into the catacombs ever again, which is interesting because it was something that he felt so passionately about. Fun fact, cultists have stolen bodies from morgues and brought them down into the catacombs to perform rituals. Mm-hmm. That is not a small feat. Stealing a body from a morgue. Transporting a body into the catacombs. There's a lot of rumors of murder victims whose remains have never been found because they've been left so far within the catacombs that they couldn't be located. Some visitors, when they go into the catacombs, have claimed that they've had rocks thrown at them. And a lot of them have claimed to have seen very different types of full-bodied apparitions.
Yeah.
A lot of the full-bodied apparitions that people describe seeing, they're very different descriptions. Men, women, different ages. And it makes sense considering that 6 million people are buried down there, right? I watched an interview with a guy that said that he had met up with a cataphile that was throwing a rave. It was apparently a pretty good time, and somebody let off one of those colored smoke bombs. Everybody started coughing, and because it's a system of tunnels and it's a very tight space, everybody started freaking out and panicking because they couldn't see each other. The visibility in general became very low. He had tripped and fallen over, and he saw a hand reach out towards him through the smoke, and he thought that it was one of the people at the rave, so he had reached out to grab the hand so that they could help each other up, and his hand went through it.
Wow.
Let's try to get real close to the present. 2017.
Oh, so legit real close.
So June of 2017, there's police reports to back this up. A 16 and 17-year-old were found after they had been lost in the catacombs for 3 days. Luckily, people had reported them missing. Friends had kind of known that that's what they were planning on doing, so the police had sent in rescue dogs. They were able to pick up some portion of a scent. This is 3 days, 72 hours of being trapped in pitch black. How the two of them did not lose each other, I don't know.
Oh, I would have grabbed you. If it was you and me.
Are you kidding?
I would have been on you.
I would have grabbed you too.
Yeah, you'd have no choice.
Oh
You'd
my
be
God,
like, cool,
yeah.
I'm going to go over here and pee.
You would have been like, there's so much ugly crying happening. I don't know if it's you or the fucking ghost. So they find them, and then once they found them, they had to rush them to the hospital to be treated because they had hypothermia. Because they weren't dressed properly. And, 57 degrees, it's not freezing, but it is chilly, and to not be dressed properly and be exposed to that for 72 hours.
Correct.
It's not okay.
Because it lowers
it's not
your
good for your
general
body.
core body temperature.
Yeah.
Did you read further into their accounts from it?
No, I didn't. I probably could have dug deeper into their identities or
no,
maybe
you
like
totally
what
can't.
happened.
You know why?
Because they're minors?
They wouldn't tell anything that actually happened while they were in the catacombs.
Really?
So while they were down there and they had been lost for X amount of time, they just kept saying, I got lost, I got lost.
It's very deep. It's rough. It's dark. It's down there. It's roughly about 25 stories.
I don't like that though.
A lot of people don't realize that there are different levels in the catacombs, and it's believed that the catacombs actually have 7 levels. The more shallow parts of it being like about 50-ish feet below ground, and then the deepest parts being about 300 feet below ground.
Okay.
Which to me is fascinating. We're talking 200 miles of catacombs. We're talking 7 different levels of them. The tunnels are not linear. They actually go up and down.
Right. But what I've heard about them is that the incline is not enough that you'd
notice it?
Yep.
Absolutely. A lot of people don't notice it. And cataphiles, like I was mentioning before, especially with the documentary, to get to certain points of it, you have to climb